Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
And the image behind us really speaks to what's going on in parts of the United States currently. We asked for a studio that was freezing, basically, but futuristic. So if you see any elements in there that speak to the future, that's what that's all about. One of the things I wanted to open with was... got an interesting write-up here about how to drive in Phoenix. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. And it really resonates because the more I read it, I thought, hey, yeah, this is very true. This is very applicable. The first thing is, they say you must learn to pronounce the city name. It is Phoenix. And then there are other names to learn, such as Ahwatukee, which is, of course, an Indian name. And, you know, that reminds me, we were, this is many years ago, we were listening to the radio, and somebody said, oh, that guy's not from here. He was giving a broadcast about Fort Huachuca, which, of course, we say Fort Huachuca. And then they talk about the morning rush hour. It's from 5 o'clock morning a.m. to noon. Evening rush hour is from noon to 7 p.m.
I can attest to that. Usually rush hour is when you're driving into downtown.
Right.
So you would think in the morning you're driving into downtown and everybody's going, and then in the evening everybody's coming home out of downtown. We live in the north edge of Phoenix. We work here. I happen to live on the south side of Phoenix, so I drive into downtown. And in the evenings, most of the time, the freeway is slow on my way into town and not as slow on my way out of town.
Okay, all right.
Weird.
So there's an advantage there for you, at least. So then they talk about Friday rush hour starts Thursday morning.
Yeah.
And now the speed limits. This is one of my favorites. The minimum acceptable speed on most freeways is 85 miles per hour.
Yes.
Now, that's not what it's posted, right? 65 typically, maybe 75, like on the 51 for a short stretch.
Yes.
But it switches. On the Loop 101, your speed is expected to at least match the highway number.
I would agree with that. And honestly, I live on the Loop 202, and I think people try to match the speed with the highway number.
Forget about the 303, which would be interesting. Now we'd need hypercars, exotic cars, to match that. But they say that if you do anything less, it's considered wussy. And, it wasn't always thus. I remember 15, 20 years ago or so, there was active enforcement. We used to have these cameras.
Yes.
And they were annoying as heck. They would actually trick you. I remember on Shea and Scottsdale Road, the speed limit on Scottsdale going south was 45. But about 500 feet before the light, it switched to 40. And there was a camera up there. Oh. And of course, you're not paying attention to that. You're in traffic or whatever. And I got at least one ticket, maybe even two, from that light alone,
Sure. Well, and I remember those cameras on the freeway, and I have to admit, I would be in the minority in saying I kind of wish they'd come back, because the drivers out on the freeway are stinking dangerous.
Well, having cameras come back, boy, I really have to think about that.
They were terribly annoying, but people drove kind of sane speeds as a result. People knew the cameras would trigger if you were 10 miles an hour over the speed limit or more.
Right.
And so traffic flow was 9 miles an hour over the speed limit.
But did you notice that people eventually figured out where they were, because they're not quite portable. There's a lot of infrastructure. You have to have a fiber feed and electrical power and all that. And the freeways would hum along at 85 to 101 until they got to the cameras, and then everybody slowed down. It was like having a trooper in front of you.
Exactly. Everybody would slow down to 74 because the speed limit was 65, and they get through the camera. I still remember that camera over at 64th Street in North Scottsdale,
right,
on the 101. So, yeah.
So then they say, forget about traffic rules you learned elsewhere. Phoenix has its own version of traffic rules. For example, cars and trucks with the loudest muffler go first at a four-way stop. The trucks with the biggest tires go second. However, in East Valley, SUV driving, cell phone talking moms always have the right of way.
Absolutely.
I was sitting at a red light yesterday, and all the other 2 lanes on my right are going, and this guy's just sitting there for about 5-10 seconds. And it was a cell phone thing. You
Sure.
know, I mean, his priority was getting that text done versus, doing what was right in traffic. Anyway, so they say if you actually stop at a yellow light, you will be rear-ended, cussed out, and possibly shot.
I would take out the word possibly, I think.
Most certainly.
Well,
Yeah.
almost certainly.
Yeah. Never honk at anyone, they say, ever. Seriously. It's another offense that can get you shot.
Yeah.
And then here's another good one. Road construction is permanent and continuous in Phoenix. Detour barrels are moved around for your entertaining pleasure during the middle of the night to make the next day's driving a bit more exciting. Watch carefully for road hazards such as drunks, skunks, dogs, barrels, cones, cows, horses, cats, mattresses, shredded tires, squirrels, rabbits, crows, vultures, javelinas, roadrunners, and the coyotes that feed on any of these items.
That's right. On the construction barriers, my sister-in-law, close to 20 years ago, drove into a great big old construction hole that was right in the middle of the road. And the reason is that they changed the construction barriers overnight, and they directed her basically into the hole, and because she didn't realize that it had changed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so true.
And then we have changes too. Like the Maricopa Freeway is also the Papago Freeway, and the I-10 are the same road. And SR 202 is the same road as Red Mountain Freeway. Now, if you think about it, Thunderbird Road turns to Cactus.
Yes.
But there's no visible designation that any of that is occurring, right?
Right.
And then you've got Glendale and Olive, which switches.
Yes.
And I think I'm leaving out one, too.
Oh, you've got several. Out in the West Valley, Waddell turns into Thunderbird, which turns into Cactus as you go further east. You've got Dobbins Road in the South Valley that turns into Guadalupe Road as you go further east.
Right.
You've got Estrella Road and Estrella Parkway. Estrella Road goes east and west, not to be confused with Estrella Parkway, which is 3 miles west and goes north and south.
Okay.
And then, of course, you've got Glendale right in the middle of town that turns into Lincoln.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So there's a whole
you're
bunch
aware
of them.
even more. All right. It's interesting driving in Phoenix. It looks like we've got a bunch of visitors already chiming in. Thank you for joining us, by the way, all of you. And feel free to comment on our content and give us some suggestions and inputs. Ledansk, too, says, I can't get past the sunglasses, although they are quite cool.
Well, thank you.
The other day, I was bored. Sitting there, turn on the TV, Netflix. I can't watch regular TV. It's just too many commercials or something irritating. But anyway, the Blues Brothers movie came on, and I was suddenly reminded again why we wear sunglasses. It's cool. We need to get those hats, though.
Those black hats would look so cool.
Elwood and Jake hats.
Absolutely. We'll replace these with like the in-ears with the little cord that goes behind us and wear those hats. We have to do that sometime.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then Sammy Kamal says, hello, Lucid family.
Yeah, speaking of Lucid, we might as well drop that bomb as well. Did you guys watch the stock this morning? I mean, it's, again, we keep saying it's buying territory, but maybe not. It keeps dropping. It actually broke through that big resistance level, that resistance level at $3.
Yeah.
And right now it's 288 was the last time we checked.
Yeah, it was running about 288. It's Lucid's had their first recall. It looks like it's not one of these software-only recalls. It is going to be a piece of hardware that has to get fixed. But at the same time, Lucid is rolling out a software update to do the diagnosis remotely and then notify the owners if their car is going to be affected by the recall or not. Kind of cool and intelligent in my mind.
And it has something to do with a battery heater, which also defrosts the windshield, which is what creates the safety issue for NHTSA anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's And they're saying that they can either go out or that they're ineffective. They're pretty much that they're too small in cold temperatures to be able to defrost the windshield and get the coolant for the battery up to the temperature that the battery needs to operate efficiently.
Sure. Now, the next event for Lucid is going to be an earnings call February 24th, I think it is.
Yeah.
So we're all anxiously awaiting for some good news.
I'm looking forward to seeing that one. When I saw this last week that Lucid only shipped 6,001 vehicles overall for 2023, that means their fourth quarter was about the same as the other three quarters have been, or somewhere around 1,500 vehicles sold. Huh. And that was really one of the key drivers behind the drop in the stock, to go below that $4 or $3.75 resistance all the way down to the $3 where it hit another band of resistance. And now it's broken through that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds like a good time to buy stock, but I'm not an investor with investment advice. So,
and we've been saying that too. When it was at $4 and something, and then it dipped to $3.75, and
not investment advice.
That's the reason
I may
we're
have
not.
Bought something this morning.
Oh, you may have. Okay, there
it's
we
possible.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. No one wants to see any of these EV manufacturers go under. I mean, we badly need to change the way transportation is done. So we're rooting for all of them, even the U.S. auto manufacturers that we thought were going to have a difficult time. By the way, our latest video out on our YouTube channel is about Mary Barra. And what we're doing is starting a series of short biographies that give some background on any of these industry leaders. And so far, I think the Mary Barra video is cranking along quite nicely, 10,000 views or more. And the goal here is to acquaint the community with who some of these people are, what their background is, what makes them passionate about EVs, and, kind of edify and try to educate people in the community.
Yeah. Now, what's the latest that you've heard about Electromechanica and the Solo, the Solo car and their troubles, pretty much?
That was quite a shock, actually, and I was embarrassed that I was unaware that Solo was unraveling. It's Electromechanica. Solo is the car. Mm-hmm. Here in Phoenix, at least, in Scottsdale, we have a large exclusive mall. It's the one with all the Gucci stores and the, Swarovski stores, the high-end stuff. And in the middle of the floor, on the first floor, generally was a bright red three-wheeled Solo EV. And it was nice going down and talking to them about their plans. They were all very optimistic. They realized that they had a revolutionary car, like Aptera is a three-wheeler as well. These three-wheelers, by the way, use in-wheel motors, so you don't have a large drivetrain. Pros and cons with that, we understand, but it was revolutionary nonetheless, and we were all excited about its prospects and, how this was going to help augment this transition. Well, I got a call from an auctioneer about a week and a half ago or so saying, yeah, there's a liquidation going on here in Arizona, and there's a large EV manufacturer that is closing their doors here, at least in the state of Arizona. And I thought, who the heck could that be? Because Lucid is here as well, right? Yeah, and the Rivian, And it turns out it was Solo. There's about a 290,000 square foot plant that is being liquidated. And apparently there have been hundreds of cars recalled, G2 and G3, I think, Solo, as many as 700 according to the auctioneer. And those are also going to be, they're not going to be liquidated. They said they were going to crush them. And I immediately thought, my God, we're going back to the GM days in the last century when the EV1 was deemed to be not viable enough, and they crushed all of them.
Oh, I know. And it's just, if somebody can get their hands on a Solo and keep it pristine and safe for the next few years, it has the chance to be that next collectible car, in my mind. There's that they're being bought out.
No, what's going on there?
In finance terms, it's called a white knight purchase. Mm-hmm. An electric truck manufacturer called XOS from Los Angeles has come to an agreement in principle to buy Electromechanica. Okay. And so the Electromechanica stockholders will end up owning 20% or so of XOS Motors.
Okay.
and they're going to keep the name alive. And I think they're buying it mainly. Like I said, they're a white knight. They're coming in, buying the assets, figure out what they can use, what they can't, they'll dispose of, but what they can, they're going to convert over into commercial trucks.
Well, that's wonderful news. Maybe the company will stay afloat in some fashion. And, you're right. If you could pick up one of these three-wheelers, apparently the issue with them is a safety issue that is unresolvable. Now, to me as an engineer, nothing's unresolvable. Nothing's impossible. That's our job, is to find a way to make it work, right? But apparently it's most likely not cost-effective to repair. And the symptom is you're driving along and you have loss of power, which, of course, is a safety issue.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, that's what's going on with Solo. And by the way, on a side note, they also are making a EV. It's a 1956 Porsche Roadster. Retro styling, even the instrumentation on the inside is retro, two-seater convertible, absolutely gorgeous car. And for $124,000 on their website, I had to go to Wayback Machine to find this, by the way, because the new website now basically says we're recalling all the cars and we're folding or closing our doors. But you can see this on the Wayback Machine. It is an absolutely gorgeous little two-speed or a convertible roadster, and all electric, by the way. Of course, that's probably not going to continue because, the company doesn't have cash flow to even support operations at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah, they've got somewhere around 40 to 45 million, but XOS is going to absorb that as part of the overall purchase of the company. So who knows if they're even going to continue that, since XOS has been focused on trucks. And it's not necessarily the large semi-trucks. It's those middle-size, like the box truck size electric trucks that XOS has been interested in and has been working on. And Electromechanica last year started a new path, as it were, to start going into that space.
Looks like we have some more comments here. Niels is joining us from Denmark. Niels, I'm surprised the Queen abdicated in Denmark, and her son now is king.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Health reasons is what was cited, but it seems like a great family. Niels is saying, why don't they use camera drones that no one sees and then get rid of the income tax?
2 words. Target practice.
Okay.
It's a sad story as far as the end of cameras in Arizona, because the real spell of the end of the cameras, which were always controversial in the freeways, came about when somebody driving an old style Chevy Suburban, as he was driving by one of these portable cameras set up in the middle of the freeway, just fired a bunch of random shots into the car. And he ended up hitting and killing the person who was in the car manning the camera. So that kind of was the final straw that broke the camel's back, as it were. But we have such a gun culture, not only in the United States, but even here in Arizona.
This is the Wild West, Mark.
Oh my gosh,
we don't like something, we shoot it.
And that's exactly what would happen: is people would figure out how to find those drones, and they would shoot them.
Well, it'd be better than skeet shooting, because you've got a slightly larger target there.
There you go.
Tempting.
So on Instagram, UKD1, it says, sounds like Vegas 2. Vegas is, they are not known for being slow. By the way, for Instagram, I know that we're back on the green screen right now, running on basically running on a cell phone. If you guys want to get the full experience and see the background and the quality picture, our main channel is on YouTube. It's Gruber Motors, and you can see the same video podcast on YouTube.
So Niels is saying someone's Chat GPT predicts Lucid will be $12 by 2024's end. So much for AI. Jesse was saying the same thing, and that's probably what motivated him to possibly have taken a Lucid position this morning, because he trusts and believes in AI.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. The article came out yesterday.
Well, and it's Niels. It's January 2024. Has 11 months of irrationality to go.
Good way to phrase that. Yeah.
one other piece to it. It wasn't ChatGPT. It was a pretty sophisticated AI algorithm on an investment exchange that is doing the predictions based on a lot of data.
Fascinating. And unlike Solo, who had unresolvable mechanical or problems with the electronics, the Lucid cars seem to be functioning for the most part. A bit clunky in terms of design in some areas. I heard, for example, that to change the cameras requires a perfectly level setting, and it's very difficult to adjust them all. There's 7 of them, apparently.
Okay.
Whereas on a Tesla, you just simply change one camera and you're on your way, you know.
Sure.
But the other portions of the Lucid design are pretty remarkable. They're pretty cutting edge, you know, from power to range to battery tech and
I've seen a few Lucids around. They're a beautiful car. They're I'm very anxious to see what the Gravity is going to look like once it starts. We'll start seeing some of the test driving, I think, up here in Phoenix, since Casa Grande's only 80 miles south of us. My own take is, again, this isn't advice. This is just kind of my opinion that's only slightly qualified. But if you remember in our last podcast, we were talking about automobiles, sedans, the coupes, the 2 doors, the 4 doors, the hatchbacks. They take up about 20% of the automotive market, or took up 20% of the auto market in 2023. The truck segment, which includes these SUVs and crossovers, is the other 80%.
mm-hmm.
So Lucid is going from an addressable market of 20% to an addressable market of 80%. The Gravity, which is going to be priced at around $80,000, probably up to about $100,000, is going to be positioned to compete with the likes of the BMW and the Audi, which the BMW sits at about $78,000 and the Audi is about $130,000. Or the Volvos of the world. The small Volvo, the XC40, is around $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
The larger Volvo, the EX90, is about $100,000. So it's going to be fitting right in the pocket of where its competition is already at. People are going to be used to buying and paying those prices. Price won't be an issue.
Yeah, we hope. Yep.
Yeah, we hope. We think. So I have personally, I think the future looks bright for Lucid.
Good news. All right, so here's a headline from Inside EVs, by the way. Plug-in car sales in Germany decreased by 58% in December 2023. And then one comment that I just had to share from Gordon. He says, EVs the biggest hoax since COVID. Given free choice, nobody wants these woke mobiles. So what's your thought about the headline?
I had to look up the article and read just a little bit. When I saw that headline, I thought, okay, there's got to be more to this story. There is.
Mm-hmm.
Even the article itself talks about it. There are 2 events that caused the 58% decline, and they have absolutely nothing to do with the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
They're government intervention in both cases.
Okay.
In the first case, the German government, in around October, early November of 2022, announced that at the end of December, they were reducing their EV subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a rush to buy plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles in December of 2023. In fact, 2022. December of 2022 was the highest sales month ever for EVs, and it was about 80 to 90% higher than the next highest month ever up to that time. And the numbers then subsequently declined again in January and throughout 2023. So even though 2023 is overall a bigger year, in the middle of December of this year, on December 17th specifically, the German government just came out and announced, oh yeah, we're not going to do any more EV subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
No warning whatsoever. people that were about to buy cars were left out in the cold. And so people are like, okay, I guess I'm not, I was going to buy the EV because of the subsidy. And there were people that were doing that. And so it tanked sales for a couple of weeks at the end of December.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2022, they artificially boosted sales. In 2023, they artificially tanked sales, or I would say more accurately, they're allowing the marketplace to say whether or not the EVs are going to survive or not.
Mm-hmm.
And even at that, the EVs are still 23% of total car sales in Europe and in Germany.
Right, right.
So, yeah, it's all government intervention.
Mm-hmm. And how well it really works, right?
And how well it really works. Although I'm thinking, for Gordon's comment, if he thinks that all EVs are woke-mobiles, then does that mean that all diesel pickup trucks are redneck mobiles?
Good point. Niels is saying, nice background picture. Yes, very
Yes.
cold in parts of the U.S. here. He says, just needs a Tesla in there that won't charge in the cold. They are piling up in Chicago these days. You know, when I read that headline to the social media team here, they said, well, now wait a minute. Norway is even colder, and there the EVs are outperforming ICE vehicles in the cold. You have more details on that, or?
I do.
Yeah.
So Teslarati came out with an article saying electric car cold weather fears dispelled in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're saying is they basically just trying to pull it up here. It looks like that the weather that they're experiencing over there. There's a gentleman that I guess helps vehicles when they get trapped into the cold, and they're seeing that they are helping way more ICE vehicles in the cold getting stuck, having problems going through than electric cars. And he's saying that the reason why they're having that is because you're able to precondition the battery, get it nice and warm, and be able to continue your long travels.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, kind of an interesting article. It's by Teslarati.
Teslarati, okay.
It's interesting to see. I'm a little confused as to why the people in Chicago are having so much problem getting their cars charged. I mean, I saw the picture, a big snowy parking lot full of Tesla chargers, full of Tesla vehicles plugged into those Tesla chargers, and the Tesla vehicles are all covered in snow because they've been sitting there for hours and they won't charge.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually interviewed a person there, and that person said that a lot of those people didn't know that you could precondition the battery, or didn't know how to precondition the battery for longer travels, because the problem is if you don't precondition it, you get to the charging station, it takes forever to charge, where if you precondition it, it'll charge like pretty much like normal.
Yeah. You know, something comes to mind here. With as smart as Teslas are, and Tesla, the company, is, you would think that the sensing products that are in the car would provide an alert for the driver and or report back to Tesla corporate that, they need to notify that driver that their car is not going to operate properly.
Well, the one thing the article didn't mention is that are these EV owners, or are these owners, or are these drivers renting EVs? So maybe they fly into Chicago on business or visit family. Hey, I want to get a Tesla because I hear, they're the latest craze. And then they go into this weather and don't know how to operate them.
Yeah, it's an education issue.
Yeah, almost kind of like with the Hertz deal. They're having a lot of issues, not with maintenance, but with individuals wrecking or damaging the EVs because they've never been in one.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that whole Hertz thing seems to be, Hertz just wasn't prepared for a higher maintenance vehicle like that. And I don't mean necessarily that the cars are failing, higher maintenance in terms of customer education or, leasing or renter education.
Yeah, I would agree with you in totally there. I don't know much about what was going on other than Hertz is dumping 20,000 EVs onto the marketplace, and that made the news again.
Right.
Have either of you guys looked up what does it take to precondition a battery?
Yeah, go on your phone and just do it. There's an app on your phone that you can precondition the battery. I actually looked at BMW's one, and all it does is you can go like an hour, maybe an hour and a half before your travel time, and precondition it. You can actually map it out in the app and have it like Monday through Friday. Say you leave at 6:30 in the morning.
Schedule it,
Yeah, you can actually schedule it out so you don't even have to touch it again. It automatically does that for you. So it's just knowing what technology the car and your phone can do for you.
This reminds me of cold weather in the 50s and 60s. You had to warm up your car because the carburetor wouldn't function properly until it warmed up.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And the old 6-volt batteries that they used to use in cars for the starter motors, the colder it got, the worse it got. So one of the tricks was to take 2 6-volt batteries, connect them in series, and jumper 12 volts onto that vehicle to get it started. Extra current, extra voltage.
I still got to do this with my diesel.
Do you?
So every winter, if I want to go up north, I change out my oil to 5W40 instead of the 10W30 or the 15W 40. So I change out the oil. I can plug in my diesel. So during the cold, like if we get a storm or something, I'm up north in Flagstaff, I can plug it in. The block is still warm and I can still fire up my truck. I got gel or an additive, so the diesel doesn't gel up on me, that I put into the tank as well.
And that's a great point that you bring up. I still remember, and it's still active today, in the north, up in Alaska. I remember going to University of Alaska Fairbanks, and between every set of stalls in your parking lot, almost like with an EV charger, you would have a line of cars, a fence, and a line of cars. And along that fence line, there were at least one 120 volt plug for every car spot.
Really? Heaters?
Engine
oil
heaters?
Yeah.
And engine block heaters. What you do is you buy your car and then whenever, and your dealer, or if you buy it private party, you would almost always have it already. They'd install a small engine block heater into the car, because when it's anywhere from 30 to 50 degrees below zero, your car just won't start.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it well. All right. Looks like we've got Niels is joining in a bit more. He's saying, but Norway isn't normally cold, and they don't use superchargers much because of the smaller distances. It is a supercharger problem, not a car problem. Well, thank you for enlightening us.
That's very enlightening. And I did not know that Norway wasn't normally cold.
Mm-hmm. It just sounds cold,
Well, it does. It's roughly the same latitude as Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay.
Oslo, Norway is, and so I think of it, and I think how, although thinking twice here, Anchorage, Alaska, having lived there for a while, or nearby there, that south central portion of Alaska does not get as cold as the Midwestern U.S. most of the time.
Interesting. 9K2JW is joining us. He says, good morning, Mr. Gruber. A big hello from Kuwait. I'm Anwar. I have bought Audi e-tron. Can you compare it with Tesla? Do you guys have any experience with the Audi e-tron? I don't.
I have very limited experience.
I can pull it up if you guys want to go through it.
Sure. Yeah, if you could, please, Jesse. I know that my wife and I like to go to AJ's Foods on Saturday morning. We'll grab ourselves a couple of iced teas and get a little breakfast at one of the restaurants around. And somebody has an Audi e-tron. They're a beautiful car. Mm-hmm. I see it there almost every Saturday. It's a nice large SUV. The price range is around $130,000 or so. And I like it, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can get the stats here. So, yeah, there's kind of the Q4. I would say one of the base models, $50,000.
Definitely an SUV, yeah.
Okay.
And then we're looking at 265 on the range.
Get my head out of the way there. There we
go. Does have DC fast charging. And 150.
Okay, so 150 kilowatts is about the speed that the supercharger at Tesla will do with their second generation charging. Mm-hmm. The third generation chargers for Model Ys and Model 3s can run at 250 kilowatts.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Anwar from Kuwait. Probably not a lot of cold weather there, I would imagine.
Probably not.
More like Arizona. For us here, it's, I don't know, 50 outside probably during the day today. That's cold for us. Yeah. So here's another headline. Mazda adopts Tesla's NACS standard, the North American Charge Standard. Are there any left that haven't adopted? I'm always surprised now when I see one. I know Stellantis is still on the fence, right?
Yeah, I thought Stellantis was the only one, and then I saw the headline that said Mazda,
And Mazda
has adopted it. My first question is, what electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles does Mazda have?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't realize that Mazda had not adopted the standard yet. So I guess another domino has fallen, as it were.
Interesting. We'll have to do some research and find out who's left, who hasn't. Speaking of, though, conversion to electric, the Mesa Fire Department. Mesa is one of the suburbs around Phoenix. We have Chandler.
Yes.
We've got Glendale. There are a whole bunch of them. And when I first moved here, they were actually separate little townships where there was some farming in between and, open land areas. Now it's all merged. It's kind of like Los Angeles. You can't tell, one municipality from another anymore. But anyway, Mesa apparently is one of the first small townships that has adopted an electric fire truck. And I know a year or so ago, I don't remember the reason, but we were talking to some of the fire department and first responders and exploring the idea of using electric vehicles in that application. And their big concern was, well, our events may not be single. One fire, we go back to the station house, we let the fire truck charge. It could be multiples during the day. And now what? How do we handle that? If we've used the electricity, not just to drive there, but to power the pumps and, some of the gear that's on the fire truck.
Sure.
Well, apparently both Mesa and Los Angeles also has one, by the way, have solved that problem, or at least aren't that concerned about it, because they have a 100% electric fire truck. There's actually a picture there, Jesse. If you want to pop that up, it's electric fire truck in the images folder. For all intents and purposes, it looks just like a fire truck, except it's white. So maybe this is a color code now that they're going to use for EVs.
I've seen some fire trucks that have been white in the past. Yellow is one I've seen before. Yeah, of course, red is the traditional color. I've seen what it looks like, the insane green, just that on a fire truck it looks yellow. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's that this fire truck. This is a medium duty vehicle, and we've already talked about first places like Solo or Electromechanica and other companies have started developing motors and larger battery packs for this size of vehicle. Does it have maybe it has a 300 kilowatt battery pack in it or something like that that'll allow it to run its pumps and do its thing for 14 hours or 16 hours before having to take a charge.
Yeah. And then I think just before we came down here to the studio, someone in the social media team pointed out that Formula E now has the ability to charge one of these race cars, to 10% capacity in 30 seconds. Kind of like a pit stop.
Yeah, it was 600 kilowatt or something like that.
It's a 600 kilowatt battery or charger? Oh, charge system. Okay, yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Extremely fast. Wow. Okay. Well, anyway, we're glad to see that, first responders are beginning to focus on getting emission-free transportation. These are definitely large, heavy vehicles that must spew a lot of hydrocarbons in the air when they're running.
Well, we've talked about in the past on the large Class 8 trucks, the semis, tractor trailers, that a single semi puts out roughly 1,000 times the emissions of a typical gasoline-powered vehicle. Mm-hmm. And so getting the semis or these buses or large, or like the fire truck off the road that use the diesel fuel or gasoline fuel is going to have an outsized impact on carbon emissions. So I like the idea. I'm excited to learn more.
Okay.
I'm wondering what would happen though in Mesa if the fire truck caught fire, if they had a bad battery.
Okay. Yeah, that would definitely make the headlines if you think about that.
That would.
Yeah, fire truck on fire would be rough.
That would be kind of rough. Have you heard about, and we've talked a lot about solid state batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about Mercedes? They don't think it's a big deal.
Interesting. What's their strategy?
Well, Sawyer Merritt posted on Twitter today a link to an article from Inside EVs that says Mercedes isn't sure that solid state batteries are really worth it. And so I'm pulling up the article here. It's and Mercedes-Benz, they say they think that by the time a good solid state battery that has 1,000 miles and 15-minute charge and so on and so forth is available commercially, that the infrastructure will be built out so you won't need 1,000 miles and 15-minute charge times.
It's a thing that we've been talking about, hinting at, is that it's difficult for a manufacturer to commit to a particular technology if the landscape is moving so quickly and all the goalposts are being moved rapidly.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a valid concern on their part.
I think they might be right. We've already got cars that can get between 400 and as much as 600 miles of range. That's on the very high end, I realize. A lot of cars are coming out with 300 miles of range. There are not very many drivers that can drive continuously for 300 miles without having some sort of a pit stop, either to stretch their legs or do a bathroom break or get something to eat or something like that. And if you're simply able to do that wherever there's infrastructure, that need for the super long range battery might not exist.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the changing chemistries that are always on the horizon, from graphene to sodium ion to it's going to be difficult to pinpoint where to invest to build out production capacity.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with Mercedes on their take here. I think their idea of a wait and see and questioning whether or not the real need is out there, I think that's a wise decision on their part. Honestly, let them focus on getting the best quality cars they can.
Right. Now, to stay for a moment with that news from Norway regarding they're not having problems with their EVs, Sawyer Merritt actually posted something here. He says, Norway Rescue Service Company Vikings Assistance Group says electric cars perform better in cold weather than ice cars.
Yeah, that's the article Aaron was referring to.
Yeah, that was the gentleman who was saying that he's seen more EVs working better in the cold weather than the ice.
Interesting.
And
well, Niels has a couple comments for us on that as well.
Okay.
He says, Anchorage is 61 degrees north latitude. Oslo, Norway is 59. So that's pretty close, honestly. Two degrees
Alaska
would be the difference between, to put it in Arizona perspective, it's probably the difference between Phoenix and Flagstaff.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less. But all the coastal regions of Norway are heated by the Gulf Stream, so they typically don't get below 0 to 5 degrees centigrade, which is in Fahrenheit for us in the United States is 32 degrees down to about 22 degrees, and they get some snow. He says even Tromsø, which is almost 70 degrees north, and it's 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, gets mild winters, but if you go just 50 kilometers inland, it gets cold.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then in regards to diesel, Neil says kerosene also works as a cold additive, or it did for us in the old days. If you ever rebuild a truck diesel engine, look into the speed of air pistons. It's a bit of efficiency and emission gains.
Interesting.
Aaron, that might help you a little bit.
We just hope Phoenix doesn't continue to get cold. This is a cold snap for us as well.
It has been. I mean, you've obviously been here long enough, Pete, that you've seen snow here in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember what happens with people when they get a quarter inch of snow on the ground?
Oh, what happens when it even rains here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it shuts down the freeways. The bad drivers become exponentially worse.
Yes.
It looks like we have someone from Israel. He or she is saying, on nuclear submarines, there are sodium zebra batteries, sodium ion batteries.
There might be a language barrier thing going on there. I'll look.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can find.
Okay.
Aaron's got to come out and fix Instagram real quick.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the sodium batteries, and it could be that there's sodium ion batteries on the nuclear submarines, and they're known to not be volatile like lithium ion. They don't catch fire.
Mm-hmm.
They're much more stable. On the periodic table, sodium and lithium are very close to one another, where sodium is, I think, element 7 and lithium is element 3 or something like that. But both of them are salts. They're bases.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it very easy to be able to do that.
There's a lot of discussion here about the cold weather impact on electric vehicles. I didn't realize there was that much discussion about it.
I know that as we've gone through this cold stretch in Phoenix, and it's not cold. I mean, come on.
Yeah, for us.
For us, it's cold. But just my own driving. Typically, I'll go around and the Tesla that I drive is 300 watts a mile or less, a little bit less. And in this cold snap, for us, it's been between 32 and about 55 degrees. 25% more energy use. I've been running close to 400 watts per mile as I do all my driving across town while these temperatures have been so cold. I've been really surprised to see it take that much more energy just to drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're not used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the people in Chicago or up in the north, I feel for them. It is, I think, an education issue more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We talked about BYD in the last podcast.
Yes.
And it continues to impress. I mean, this is a company that is in the news more and more these days.
They are. And, Tesla stock has been down this year. And it's starting to make news because they haven't been down like this since they were a very young company, like 2010, 2011. BYD is one of the reasons.
Interesting. Yeah.
They talk the talking heads, the press, the news talk about BYD and say, Elon was talking just a year ago about how BYD was going to become one of his biggest competitors, but I didn't think it would happen quite yet. And then, boom! All of a sudden, in the fourth quarter, it's like it's there. BYD is producing cheaper cars with good quality and a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the factors that has been hurting Tesla stock over the last 3 weeks or so.
Has Elon been in the news, guys? I thought you guys were saying something this morning.
Yeah, there's talk yesterday on Twitter. He was talking about how his ownership stake in Tesla. Basically, I can find the X posts and pull those up, but he was saying he doesn't want to ever own a minority share, go below 25% ownership to where he wouldn't have significant voting power on the board, because he doesn't really trust what would happen if other people were making all the decisions for the company.
Right. Good point.
Yeah, that sounds like a typical
CEO concern.
It's a CEO concern, but not just any kind of CEO. It's Elon is an icon. He's very open. He's very vocal. Tesla is in his blood. I think of Lee Iacocca in the 80s with Chrysler. He was the same way. Very mercurial, I think is maybe the word for it that I'm thinking of. And Lee Iacocca didn't want to give up. He ended up, I think he ended up getting fired at some point because he didn't have that ownership claim. Or Steve Jobs on Apple. Same type of thing. Steve Jobs was Apple. Apple was Steve Jobs until suddenly the board got ganged up on him, got together and fired him. And it was a lot that Steve Jobs seemed to be unable or unwilling to compensate for his personal weaknesses. Yet, for Apple, how the story was written. 3 years later, Steve had built up his own NACS computer. It was running about $400 or $500 million a year in sales. Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy, so they bought out NACS computer, brought Steve Jobs back in, and put him as the chairman of the board, and the rest is history. The iMac came out a few months later, and the iPhone was shortly after that. So I could see Elon not want to have to take that kind of route, and having a high stake in Tesla will help ensure that he never has that problem.
And he probably watched that same scenario unfold and is a bit nervous about.
So I have the post if you want to look at
Sure.
it.
Let's take a look.
You want to read this? Can you read it or no?
So Elon owns, I'm starting to 411 million shares of Tesla. Yeah, there we go. And that is not incentive enough for Tesla, the company, to do well in the years to come, is the question mark. His 100 billion today turns into 1 trillion if Tesla surpasses if they surpass Saudi Aramco and Apple.
So here's Elon's response to this, basically.
So the question was, what's the reason for another comp change? Yeah. Okay, there we go. I am uncomfortable growing Tesla to be a leader in AI and robotics without having a 25% voting control. It's enough to be influential, but not so much that I can't be overturned. Okay.
And it says, unless that's the case, I would prefer...
It jumped off the screen, Jesse.
It's right here. I had to hit more. You had to.
I would
hit
prefer
more.
to build products outside of Tesla. If you can scroll that up a little bit. You don't seem to understand. Tesla is not one startup, but a dozen. Simply look at the delta between what Tesla does and GM. Very true. As for stock ownership itself being enough motivation, Fidelity and others own similar stakes to me, so why don't they show up for work? There you go. There's a good point.
And here's one more where he was saying, I think you were mentioning this one, Pete, where he's saying that he doesn't have beef with the board members or something like that.
Yeah, I should note that the Tesla board is great. The reason for no new compensation plan is that we are still waiting for a decision in my Delaware compensation case. The trial for that was to be held in 2022, but a verdict has yet to be made. So he says, I put compensation plan in quotes because from my standpoint, this is primarily about ensuring the right amount of voting influence at Tesla. If I have 25%, it means I'm influential, but can be overridden if twice as many shareholders vote against me versus for me. At 15% or lower, the for and against ratio to override me makes a takeover by dubious interests too easy. I would be fine with a dual-class voting structure to achieve this, but I'm told it's impossible to achieve post-IPO in Delaware.
There's a lot of sense to that, a lot of logic there. He's saying, look, I want to be the guy that has the outsized influence in the company. If I'm wrong, it's going to take 2 to 1 to tell me I'm wrong. Okay. I get that.
You can handle that.
I could see that. I could totally see that. So, wow, we're almost at time.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we got 1 minute.
And by the way, the next podcast that we're doing here is going to be the Tesla Roadster podcast. So if you would like to join that, we're going to be talking about Tesla Roadsters are not waterproof. We've had another example of someone that left one out in the rain. It didn't melt, but it created some problems. Quickly, Zaban Fani says, hi, I want to have Tesla TSBs. Could you send me these documents? TSBs.
I'm trying to think. I don't know right offhand.
Don't know what that
If you can clarify, we'll get your comment offline, and we'll be able to help figure out if we can get those. OCD Auto also asks, so who is BYD? So a Tesla older radio update requires an MCU chip removal. Crazy but true. Yes, it does. There's an old Tegra and a new Tegra chip. BYD is a BYD automotive group. It's based out of China. They've been in existence since, I think it was around 2008
We'll have
or
our
so.
Who is series actually coming out about them too soon.
Yeah. So
the chairman of BYD is Wang Chuanfu. He is from Anhui, China. I know all this because I did the bio.
yeah,
And we'll have a great history lesson on at least the chairman. And we also have another series coming out, which is going to be Spotlight On. And we'll do one with BID, and that's more related to the company history.
yes.
Technical Services Bulletin. Okay. You know, some of the information we have is proprietary. Some of it we got from Tesla, and we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So there's a certain amount of information that we cannot share legally. However, if you watch our YouTube channel, there's an enormous amount of technical information in there, and we'll do a better job of creating tutorial videos in the future. In the meantime, this closes out our EV podcast for Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. In 5 minutes, we're going to resume with the Tesla Roadster podcast. So if you'd like to join us, stay tuned to the channel.
Take care.
Thank you.